ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music and more.
Charismatic, rich, stylish, glamorous. Christopher and Pixie Skase were the it couple of the 80s.
Getting an invitation to a Skase party was prized real estate.
But when their business empire teeters, it's Pixie who pays a massive price.
This sort of gilded cage that she was a prisoner in.
I'm Mark Humphreys. Search for ABC Rewind and look for Skase, Fall of a Tycoon on the ABC Listen app or wherever you get your podcasts.
This week, Donald Trump told pregnant women to fight like hell not to take Tylenol, or what we call paracetamol. He linked the drug to autism, even though the science doesn't back that up. Today, Corinne Purtill, a science and health reporter at the LA Times, on the ripple effect Trump's misinformation is having around the world. I'm Sam Hawley on Gadigal Land in Sydney. This is ABC News Daily. Corinne, it was back in April this year that the US Health Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., pledged to find the cause of autism by September.
By September, we will know what has caused the autism epidemic and we'll be able to eliminate those exposures.
And, well, apparently he has.
Yes. He later walked that back and said that they would begin to have some of the answers. And so on Monday, the administration held a press conference to announce what they described as sort of the first of those findings and the first step the administration is planning to take in this, what they call this bold action on autism.
So September's come. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and, of course, President Trump say that they have the answer. And they have this really quite bizarre press conference.
Thank you very much. So I've been waiting for this meeting for 20 years, actually. And it's
Donald Trump is standing there sort of like he's a medical expert.
So what happened on Monday was President Donald Trump held a press conference in the White House to announce what they are sort of describing as the earliest findings on potential causes of autism. What they highlighted was what they described as a link between taking acetaminophen, it's also called paracetamol. In the United States, the most popular brand name it's sold under is Tylenol, during pregnancy.
Effective immediately, the FDA will be notifying physicians that the use of let's see how we say that. Acetaminophen, which is basically commonly known as Tylenol, during pregnancy can be associated with a very increased risk of autism.
What was unusual about this press conference was that it started off with an address from President Donald Trump in which he told women to fight like hell, not to take paracetamol during their pregnancies, to avoid it at all costs.
I want to say it like it is. Don't take Tylenol. Don't take it. If you just can't, it's just fight like hell not to take it.
And it's just part of this broader picture in the administration of sort of a disregard for what best practice in science is telling us.
When the alternative is that nothing bad can happen, let's do it now. I was just saying to Bobby and the group, let's do it now. Nothing bad can happen. It can only good happen.
And President Trump, who was also dishing out all sorts of other medical advice too, wasn't he? He appears to be an expert on vaccines as well.
He did sort of kind of go on some tangents.
And they pump so much stuff into those beautiful little babies. It's a disgrace. They're pumping, it looks like they're pumping into a horse.
Made several statements about the hepatitis B vaccine as well, which currently here that vaccine series begins at birth. He suggested that children hold off until the age of 12 because he said it's a sexually transmitted disease. Why would you vaccinate a baby against a sexually transmitted disease?
There's no reason to give a baby that's almost just born hepatitis B. And I think if you do those things, it's going to be a whole different. It's going to be a revolution in a positive sense in the country.
Well, the reason you would do that is because children can acquire hepatitis B from their mothers if they are infected, not just at birth, but during childhood as well. It's actually can be quite easily transmitted. There's a lot of reasons to question some of these statements made.
And let's remember, of course, Corinne, that the president has form right because during COVID, he was encouraging Americans to try completely unproven treatments.
This is definitely a pattern for President Trump.
Supposing we hit the body with a tremendous, just very powerful light. I happen to be taking it.
Hydroxychloroquine?
I'm taking it, hydroxychloroquine, because I think it's good. I've heard a lot of good stories. Right, and then I see the disinfectant, where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection?
The statements that he makes publicly are often at odds with the advice that is being given by his own public health advisors, by his own cabinet members sometimes, certainly by the broader scientific community. And, he even said during this statement, these aren't the doctors telling you this. This is just me saying this. These are just sort of my own thoughts.
I'm just making these statements from me. I'm not making them from these doctors because when they talk about, different results, different studies, I talk about a lot of common sense, and they have that too. They have that too, a lot.
All right, well, Corinne, let's then consider the impact across the world because scientists and medical professionals far and wide are really worried about these statements from President Trump and RFK Jr., including, of course, here in Australia. The Therapeutic Goods Administration here, which is our medicines regulator, if you like, it's been reassuring pregnant women that paracetamol is safe to take.
It is safe to use, that it has no identified proven effects on the outcome of your unborn baby.
This message from Donald Trump, it has an impact far and wide, doesn't it?
He obviously has an incredibly large stage for whatever subject he's holding forth on. Typically the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention up till this point have been seen as sort of a global leader in health advice. Unfortunately, under this administration and the leadership of Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., there's an enormous amount of concern about the scientific standards of the CDC being lowered, of long-term experienced staff members being forced out. We saw just earlier this month, the former director of the CDC, who was appointed by President Trump, spoke before Congress to discuss her firing by Secretary Kennedy just a few weeks ago. She said that part of what led to her firing was that she refused to sign off on changes that Kennedy wanted to see to the U.S. childhood vaccination schedule without seeing the scientific evidence for them. And she maintains that this ultimately led to her being dismissed.
My name is Susan Monaris, and I am a microbiologist and immunologist. On the morning of August 25th, Secretary Kennedy demanded two things of me that were inconsistent with my oath of office and the ethics required of a public official. He directed me to commit in advance to approving every ACIP recommendation, regardless of the scientific evidence. He also directed me to dismiss career officials responsible for vaccine policy without cause. He said if I was unwilling to do both, I should resign.
Last week, the committee that typically advises the CDC on the vaccine schedules met for the first time since Secretary Kennedy dismissed all of the experts who served on that committee before, brought in a slate of people that he has selected. And there's real concern about the long-term ramifications of this and how this might end up changing both the U.S. vaccination schedule and then ultimately what that means for other parts of the world that rely on that leadership to help develop some of their own policies.
Yeah, okay. So basically Trump and Kennedy, they're stacking the medical bodies in the United States, the FDA, for instance, the Food and Drug Administration, the CDC, as you mentioned, the Centre for Disease Control, with like-minded people, if you like.
Absolutely. And I certainly want to, make clear that there still are representatives on this committee who are experienced medical professionals, but there is a lot of concern that there is pressure from the administration, pressure from the leadership to move away from that science-informed, evidence-based process of decision-making to one that favors conclusions that are favored by Kennedy and this administration.
Well, the World Health Organization, it's also pushing back against this advice. And it says that, women, just follow your doctor's advice or your health worker's advice, as in maybe don't take medical advice from a 79-year-old man in America who has no basis for his claims and, by the way, has never been pregnant, Corinne.
I think it is always the best decision to seek your medical advice from your doctor, from a medical professional. Even Vice President J.D. Vance was giving an interview earlier this week. His advice as well was women should talk to their doctors. So I think that is a pretty safe conclusion to draw here.
And Corinne, another point is, isn't it, that there's no actual evidence to suggest that autism is actually increasing.
Well, and that's another really interesting point. Kennedy has, even before joining this administration, has been, laser focused on this idea of increasing autism rates in the United States. And it is absolutely true that the rate has grown since the CDC started tracking it in 2000. In 2000, it was 1 in 150 children. The most recent data comes from 2022, and it was 1 in 31 children. But it's impossible to understand that growth unless you understand that the diagnostic definition of autism has changed drastically during that time. An autism diagnosis now applies to a much, much broader range of behaviors, differences, needs, challenges. It's not really an apples to apples comparison between what an autism diagnosis means now and how it was conceived in 2000 and in the decades before then. Another major factor is, here in the United States, we look for it more often than we used to. Starting in 2007, it became the American Academy of Pediatrics started recommending that pediatricians do universal screening for early signs of autism during children's well baby checkups. We have a better sense of what autism looks like, across gender, better identifying it in girls. Any legitimate researcher on autism will tell you we don't know exactly what causes this condition, but we do know that whatever it is a very complicated mix of factors that almost certainly includes genetics, may include environmental factors or not. That can mean parental age. It can mean things like infections or fevers during pregnancy, which ironically is, you treat with paracetamol during pregnancy.
All right. Well, Corinne, we know this has been a long time crusade of RFK Jr.'s linking vaccines to autism. I mean, this started for him back like 20 years ago. So in a sense, he's spent decades sowing the seeds of doubt in people's minds, hasn't he? And now Trump's sort of jumped on it like he just wants to deal with it and give people an answer.
All I can really speak to is, even prior to his nomination to lead the Department of Health and Human Services, Kennedy has made a number of inaccurate statements without evidence regarding autism, vaccines over time, and now he's in a position of influence.
All right. Well, as we mentioned, it has a ripple effect across the world. This has been a really worrying time, I would have thought, for pregnant women and, of course, for people with autism or parents with children with autism.
I spoke over email with the director of the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, and he pointed out that the most significant thing that an administration could do is to invest in both programs that support individuals and their family throughout the lifespan and look at ways that we can improve the quality of life and outcomes for individuals with autism. Where it comes from is certainly important, but for people living their lives day to day, it's much more relevant and much more urgent to invest in programs that can make their life better.
Corinne Purtill is a science and health reporter for the LA Times. This episode was produced by Jessica Wukyanov and Cinnamon Nippard. Audio production by Sam Dunn. Our acting supervising producer is Sydney Peat. I'm Sam Hawley. ABC News Daily will be back again on Monday. Thanks for listening.